What is up, everyone? Welcome to Nuke the House College Basketball Betting Season Preview. I'm Steve Boyden, Steve Boyden VT on Twitter. Closing on the start of the season. College hoop season is 8 days away, about a week up from opening night next Monday. We're going to do a different type of show here. You know, we've done a bunch of DFS shows. I'm excited to take a betting look on the season from two guys who are excellent college basketball bettors, obviously. I got to bring in Gav first. Gav, I think you're excited for this one. We already have a bunch of futures down for the season. Last year was a total smash in that department, obviously headlined by the ED National Player of the Year at 45-1. You gave out on a Big Ten preview show, hopping on the UConn wagon, obviously after the tough stretch in January. Anyways, how are you, man?
Yeah, doing good. We do got plenty of bets down this year. You know where we really cleaned up was like the conference win totals on Bet Rivers. Yeah. I haven't seen them yet, but those may be popping up here in the next couple of days. So, I'll probably be tweeting out stuff like that. But yeah, I think the whole journalism malfunction yesterday with Texas A&M just kind of sent me full tilt off the edge of the college football cliff, and I'm just so ready for college basketball to start.
Hell yeah, dude. All right, let's bring in John Fendler at John Fendler, Jon on Twitter. Join us again, help us break down some betting angles to attack going into the season. John, this is a different kind of show. We had you on to break down some like teams last year, but this is more of your style with the betting angle. How was your summer? Are you excited for the season?
Summer was fun. College football season has been a whole lot of not fun, but we're 8 days away from hopefully turning the page and getting into hoops. But we were talking right before we went on air, and you guys were telling me about this A&M football debacle yesterday. And the first thing I thought was, holy shit, here we go. We're going to have 4 months of this with college basketball beat reporters. Whatever they do, whatever information they're supposed to be getting, it's incredible how often they just seem to not be able to perform a very basic function of the job.
Gab, any thoughts on that? I know that you put it on Twitter, but any last thoughts on the A&M thing that happened yesterday?
Yeah, I had to get my pound of flesh yesterday, but it's like, imagine when we can't even get injury news on not only 133 D1 teams, but that's a power conference team and a big conference game. Now we got 363 teams, so injury reporting is going to be even more scarce to find.
Yeah, we have a bunch to touch on this show. I'm super pumped to just chop it up with you guys. I think that we should start with national championship Final Four bets. I know, Gavin, that you placed a couple already, so I'll let you start. Is there anything that's still actionable? What do we got here for championship Final Four bets?
Yeah, so championship-wise, we scooped up kind of a roguish 40-1 on Marquette, a 50-1 on Villanova. Just I'm really high personally, just on the top of the Big East, not named UConn. So I think those are kind of two teams that I feel pretty good about now. Kyle Neptune is obviously a worry, but that was the case with 50-1. It's a little bit different discussion there. I think they're down a bit. They're not quite at that range, but kind of I think if I had to make one bet right now, and not just because they had a good-looking scrimmage today without their, starting backcourt, but I thought that Tennessee, at 30-1, just being priced around some of the teams that they should be much closer to the Michigan States, the Kentuckys, the Houstons.
Who are they priced around?
So, Bama, Gonzaga. I don't believe in Gonzaga at all. Baylor's right around there too. Nova's even down to 35. So, I think if I made one bet, I mentioned on Twitter, if Rick Barnes had a championship under his belt, what would the Tennessee odds be in this case? It's probably 20-1, I'd say. We might be getting just free, $10 worth of discount because
they're a top 12 team, I think, John.
Yeah, I think their top 8 players is up there with Duke in terms of best in the country. They still, we saw Dalton Connect look so good on offense, man. And yeah, he's not going to shoot that well every game, but you could tell that offense is going to be much better this year.
It has to be.
Obviously, with Zakai healthy, so we know we're going to get with the defense. I think 30-1 is not a bad way to look for those guys.
What do you think, John?
Well, I played that same Nova 50-1 back May 31st, and
yeah,
I think everyone at this point has the same opinion on Kyle Neptune, but this is just, the way I always approach it is just, purely a ratings perspective. Is if this is a borderline top 10, top 12 team, say they go into the tournament as like a 3 or a 4 seed. I mean, 50-1, I don't care who it is. Like, that's just a good play that gives you hedging opportunities if they get late into the tournament. I agree with Gavin on Tennessee. I mean, this is a team that's usually an analytics darling. I mean, they spent a lot of time top 3 in KenPom last year. The offense should be orders of magnitude better this year. And yeah, it's the Barnes narrative, the same narrative that Tony Bennett had and Scott Drew had and Jay Wright had. I mean, it's
last year
they can't, right, but early, yeah, who lost in the first round the year before. They can't win the big one until they do. So I agree, 30-1. I don't have like a real. I mean, Nova's like they're not in the top tier, but Tennessee to me actually is like a potential top 4, top 5 team.
Yeah, I think that 31 look. Did we get that on Caesars? Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually took that today with you, Gav. Do we have anything else? I took Duke 15-1. I fucking hate betting on Duke, but man, complete roster. What I love about that team, John, is we're not relying on freshmen coming in to be the guys. We're relying on them to fill up 12 to 15 minutes off the bench with proven players who we know what we're going to get in the starting 5. I honestly think that Duke's just going to roll through the ACC this year. What do you think, John?
Yeah, so do I. I know we'll get to the ACC more individually, and I do have a Virginia 6-1 that I played basically just because of their really easy schedule draw in the ACC.
We might have to kick you off the show if you bet a Virginia future, but
I've spent the last couple of years utterly shitting on Virginia, so the fact that I'm even saying like a modicum of a nice thing, I think that should be allowed.
Yeah, go ahead. So Duke,
John,
Duke.
is that where you would plant your flag on amongst these top teams? The Kansas, the Duke, the Purdue, the UConn, the Sparty.
Yeah.
Where do you kind of shake out in terms of where would you play?
I have two flag plants. It's going to be Duke and Sparty, I think. John, what do you think as far as like the top tier?
Just purely ratings, I would still go Purdue over Duke, but Duke's roster probably better built for the tournament. So I think it's 2 separate questions. Purdue is so optimized to just dominate the Big Ten. It's the perfect style of play. But you get deep into March, there is something to that Purdue narrative. I think we talked about this last year and maybe the year before about how hard it is to be so big man centric in the tournament. So that still is a problem. Granted, yeah, you can get a really easy draw and just kind of roll through, but purely on ratings, I still go Purdue, maybe like a point above Duke.
Yeah, I think that was our problem with Kansas too, like being big man centric in the tournament. We haven't really seen that work out, in the last couple of years. What are your thoughts on Duke futures? I went to Virginia Tech. I hate Duke, but I think Duke is the best bet on the board if you can find a 15 or so as far as like the top 5 teams or so. What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of echo what John says. I think Purdue probably has the highest floor amongst all these teams. Short of an Edey injury, it's really hard to see how they don't finish, top 7 to 10 of KenPom. But I don't know if they have the ceiling of Duke. I mean, we just
saw they pay out for top 7.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They the 2 young point guards, they still had some trouble with Arkansas's length. It didn't look like it was just kind of they're a year older. They're going to be just fine with this kind of in your jersey pressure.
I think Arkansas is going to be gnarly, by the way. But
yeah,
we'll get to that. But Gav, Duke thoughts overall, and would you take them to win the ship?
Yeah, I mean, I bet him. I think a lot of it is going to have to do with think of how much less spotlight is going to be on Shire this year in terms of what it was last year in the post Coach K circus. It's kind of why I think I'm liking Neptune at least to kind of just plug and play the Nova system. He doesn't have to redo the wheel. But yeah, Duke might have the top 8 best players, or I guess the best depth of 8, 9 men in the country. And that's not even really counting if any of these frosts are good versus like a Kentucky who is going to need these freshmen to be impactful from the jump. So yeah, I'm good with Duke. Already bet him. I think that's probably where I'm going first.
Yeah, so not sure what is still out there. We as far as championship bets, we bet Duke at 15, Marquette at 40 was on what? Caesars, Gav. John, last thoughts on Duke. Do you think that they have the roster to do this? And then like a lot of people are pegging Tyrese Proctor to be the guy. I'm not really sure that he's ready for that jump. But just like the last thoughts on Duke, and then let's go into Final Four bets.
Yeah, the Proctor thing, I can see and I don't follow the draft stuff at all. I think a lot of this is probably based on projection, the measurables and all that. So I can't speak to that at all. But I think just the way the roster's set up, he's not going to need to be the guy. The usage is going to be pretty balanced in that top 6-ish. Obviously, they're going to be able to play through the post a lot with Filipkowski. So I don't really see a need for him to, dominate with 28%, 29% usage. But yeah, I see the same ceiling you guys do. I'm curious what will happen just purely narrative-wise if they drop one of the games in that first week or so. They play Arizona first Friday of the year at Cameron, and then they play obviously Michigan State.
You're going to fucking work Arizona.
Yeah, that's a pretty tough first road game the first week of the season. But then Michigan State obviously in Chicago the next week.
Yeah.
So if they look bad in one of those two, I wonder if that whole narrative starts to build early, maybe there's a little bit of a drop off in the odds.
Mm-hmm. All right, well let's go into Final Four bets. John, have you made any bets there as far as teams going to the Final Four? I know it's a different market than championship. I'm not saying it's easy to make the Final Four, but from the Final Four to the championship is obviously a tall task.
I very, very much prefer this market the last couple of years, and part of it is like last year I had a San Diego State 80-1 to win the national championship, and what did that get me? Being an 8-point underdog in the championship, I couldn't even hedge it. So I'd much rather be in the Final Four market, and I did well with it last year. I played 3 this year, might add 1 or 2 more. Auburn 14-1, Kansas State 14-1, and Miami 10-1. So I don't know how we want to go.
Auburn's going to be good, man. I love Auburn.
Yeah. So I don't know if we want to. I don't know. I mean, do we each want to go around? Do we want to do them individually?
No, I mean we're just going to give it out, and then we're going to go conference by conference. So we can talk about the teams later. Yeah. Gav, any Final Four bets for you?
Yeah, I took a team that I think is, again, going to be high floor, but I don't know if it's going to really have the ceiling potentially to get over. What's that?
Can I guess?
It's Texas A&M, you dope. But I think 15-1. I don't know if they're really going to have the ceiling. Wade Taylor, I think, can carry it easily to the second weekend just by his scoring. And it was just that they were so fortunate last year in the worst shooting conference in the country. But 15-1, like
huge floor on that team.
When they're priced around, an Oregon, a TCU, a Xavier is 15-1. Like, I just bet a number there, kind of with the roster. I feel decent about them.
Yeah, Xavier's got no shot at that with what's currently going on. John, thoughts on A&M here?
It has nothing to do with numbers, but A&M games, every A&M game is such a shit show because of the fouling on both sides. I just was looking. I haven't gotten to watch any of the scrimmages from this weekend, but I did see they played Texas Tech earlier today. There were like 65 free throws attempted between the two of them.
Yeah.
It's such a brutal style. But, and I think we saw this play out last year against Penn State. Yeah, the SEC was such an awful shooting league.
Yeah.
Buzz's strategy is like, listen, we're going to let you fire up as many threes as you want. And every now and then you're going to get caught on the wrong side of that. That's my only concern with them having to win a bunch of games in a row is what if you just run into that hot shooting team? But on paper, they are borderline top 10.
Yeah, I think the floor is really high on that team, right? Like they're going to win a bunch of games. Gav, you actually brought up that same exact thing in our preview show for the conference. Just like, what if people start making shots against A&M? That's going to be tough. I think we should just go into the Wooden Awards, Gav, here. You had one last year, obviously, with Edie, Elite Call, 45-1. We're all limited on all of our books because of that. So thank you for that. But do we have anything going into this season that you like for the Wooden here, Gav?
Yeah, I took 4 bets. So basically, I kind of did similar what I did with Duke in terms of, playing your flag on kind of one of these top guys. And I went with Dickinson. 9-1 seems pretty fair. John brought up on Twitter months ago about, their lack of wing scoring that they're going to have this year compared to last 2 years. And I think I mentioned last time that Bill Self had a back to the basket big, and Azubuike, they were like 91st% in post up frequency, and Dickinson just shot or 91st percentile in post up free. So they were like one of the higher end ones in the country, and Dickinson just took 20 shots. So I think, Filipowski gets kind of hurt by so many mouths to feed and so many people able to score. Baycott is probably the worry, because at any point, if Hubert Davis realizes that he has Armando Baycott on his team, then he could be like a 20-point, 12 rebound guy, which could threaten. But I went first with Dickinson, then took the flyer on Klingon at 30-1.
Yeah.
The only person in the country last year that had kind of comparable rates to Edie, and obviously into a potential full roll. Who knows with the foot? That obviously is not what you want to start the year off with. But
right.
Then went Kolek 30-1. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Like, returning Big East Player of the Year on a team that I love this year, and could threaten almost like triple double numbers. I think they'll be even better from an assist perspective. Cam Jones being a year older, Joplin off the bench versus Omax Prosper, who just put a lot more rim pressure. And then the fourth guy I went with.
I don't like this one.
I'm curious to hear you guys, but Jameer Young. So I kind of look back at all the guards that have won Wooden Award, and I think they were all juniors or older, except for like Trey Burke. It was Jimmer Fredette and Buddy Hield and stuff like this. And on a team that I think could make a jump into the first tier of the Big Ten in Maryland, Jameer Young is going to have such alpha usage, like that's not even really going to be contested. If they're going to be good, it's going to be because of him. So I took a shot, 55-1. What the hell? Why not?
Yeah, so I disagree with that because I think that Maryland's going to be more balanced this year with like the freshmen, the 2 fresh that they have coming in. Both my parents went to Maryland, so I would love if Jameer Young won the fucking Wooden Award. John, we got to go to you first. Like, Klingon is the obvious first talking point that we have to talk about, and then go wherever you want.
I'm not familiar with these odds, but Klingon, let's play this out and say the foot is a non-issue and he's fine.
Yeah.
What does it look like for him?
He's playing opening day, so let's just say that he has a full season.
Okay, what is he playing on a minutes basis? 25, 26 minutes
28.
a game?
I was going to say like 26, 28.
28.
So what's Edie's 32, 33 against good teams?
Yeah, 31.
That's hard to make up that difference. Even though Klingon is such a per minute monster, efficiency monster, I'm not sure he gets enough volume to get there.
So do you like anyone else in this market here?
I haven't looked, but I mean, to Gavin's point, Jameer Young, as we know, one of the elite shooters in the country, according to Andy Katz. So, I mean,
according to Andy Katz, unreal.
Yeah, Andy put out one of his infamous lists. Jameer Young was like in his mind was like the 5th best shooter in the country. So
he shot like 32% from 3 last year or something.
Exactly, yeah, and not any better over his career either. But
all right, John, let me bend your ear about Kalkbrenner. So I took an 80-1 on Kalkbrenner. This is, I think, a top, like with a bullet, top 12 team probably, right? Elite defensive player in his role. If he scores more, if he's the best player on a top, like the ceiling on Creighton, I think is what, top 3 team probably.
I think so. Yeah.
The best player on a top 3 team, you're getting at 80-1. I think that Kalkbrenner is worth a look.
It seems anecdotally, like the media people are like kind of coming around lately to the fact that defense actually matters. So that helps a little bit in that they recognize his value as a two-way player. Because if it was just purely offense, then he would never be in the conversation. But if the mood,
enough, right?
if the mood has shifted, and it helps too that Ashworth is a guy who will look to distribute. He's an elite shooter, but he will pass the ball too. So is Kalkbrenner like the number 2 option? It's hard to say if they even have an alpha. They're so balanced. But at that price, I'm not going to nitpick it.
Yeah. Gav, thoughts on Kalkbrenner before we get into the conferences here?
Yeah, his rebounding kind of regressed each of the last 2 years.
6.2 rebounds a game as a center. That's got to be better, right?
Yeah, I think that improves. But I think another component is not having Kaluma out there and Nembhard. The ball kind of stuck a little bit. I think the floor gets even spaced better, even though Creighton, I think, was like top 3 in spacing last year on shot quality. But I think opens up the floor. He could threaten kind of 20 points a game. I think he was like 16 or 17 last year, which kind of sounded more than I would have initially thought. But yeah, 80-1 ain't bad at all.
He is so good as a rim runner and in transition. So many of the bigs are just kind of like dunker spot guys, but like he actually can move, understands how to cut. Like he's just a cut above most of the other high major bigs, just in terms of his knowledge.
Yeah, so Kalkbrenner last year was 15.9 points, 6.1 boards, 2.7 steals plus blocks. I think he can threaten 18 and 8 probably this year. At 80-1, if you can still find that, I think that's worth a look. All right, guys, let's get into the conferences because this is what we really want to talk about. So we're going to go through the 6 major conferences, and we're going to go through teams that we love or hate based on whichever metric that you guys want to talk about. Ken Pom, Evan Mia, whatever you guys want. Gav, I'll give the floor to you. ACC love team. It was hard for me to find a love team in the ACC, honestly.
I'm going to go this is so fucking disgusting, but I'm going to say Syracuse. I think you have potentially two of the better shot creators in the conference. I think part of, John talks about these teams that are unmodelable. I don't know how you model Syracuse this year based on how you think they're going to play. They're playing up the line pressure in the scrimmages, but having Judah Mintz, who I think has or probably ends up first team all ACC, I think this team could definitely leapfrog. I basically had the ACC only in 3 tiers. And there was 7 or 8 teams in the bottom tier. So I think they could end up kind of towards the top of that.
The ACC? What are your tiers for the ACC?
I think it was, what did I do? I did Duke, UNC, and Miami in tier 1. And then I did Virginia in tier 2. I'll listen to the argument of at the bottom of tier 1, but I did them.
I listen to the argument.
I did them, Vatek, and Clemson tier 2, and then pretty much just dumped everybody else in tier 3. Who knows?
Yeah. John, team that you're high on in the ACC.
Well, we're doing this. It's a betting focused show, so I could throw out a ton of ATS numbers from Micah Shrewsbury, who to me maybe a top 5 X's and O coach in the country, and I think he goes back to what he did 2 years ago with Penn State, where he had obviously a much better roster than he has this year, but he just played stall ball. They were excruciatingly slow. I think they're going to be interesting when they're catching a ton of points. They're not going to turn it over. Can he uncover a lead guard who can make a play at the end of the shot clock? Maybe the freshman, Marcus Harris, like that. Maybe he's the guy. I don't know. But I trust Shrewsbury, and it's hard to reconcile Louisville at 109 in Ken Pom and Notre Dame at 165. That is, you have a bottom 5 Power 5 coach in Kenny Payne, maybe a top 10 Power 5 coach in Shrewsbury, maybe.
John, if you had to bet going into the season, who finishes higher in Ken Pom, Louisville versus Notre Dame?
Notre Dame.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Gav?
Yeah. I will say, though, if you flip those rosters, say you give Shrewsbury Louisville's roster this year, are they a borderline tournament team?
Probably. But
it could be, yeah.
Yeah. clearly a dipshit. Anyways, keep going. Sorry.
That's I agree with you guys. It's hard to find a whole lot to like here. Other than so the Syracuse thing is interesting. I think they're gonna be. I only caught a few minutes of the scrimmage, but it looks like they're gonna play really fast, and they should. They should play fast. They should pressure the shit out of the ball with their depth and their athletes. But that's probably gonna make them like a combustible, high variance team game to game. But you certainly see a ceiling there that didn't exist last year. So I'm intrigued. They're going to lay some eggs too, but they're interesting.
Yeah. So for Syracuse, what intrigues me, Gav, is the ceiling, right? Because a lot of these ACC rosters, you're like, we kind of know what we got, and they can at least have a ceiling. So my team was Wake Forest. Obviously, a really good coach. Bringing in, I think, Hunter, like the last 2 years, he has brought in a transfer that has been an NBA draft pick that next season. Hunter Sallis was a top 10 guy, 2 years ago? Kind of log jammed at Gonzaga, obviously. But like Sallis, Hildreth, Monsanto, Carr, Marsh, like this team's being picked, 8th and 9th? I think this team can be 4th or 5th in this conference. Gav, what are your thoughts on Wake Forest here?
Yeah, at least Appleby played for Florida in the SEC, but dude, Alondis Williams was a freaking bench warming corner stander on OU and was the ACC Player of the Year. It was wild, man. So yeah, Steve Forbes was just one of those transfer whisperers, just kind of like Ed Cooley did, where you just unchain these guys.
Trust him, right? Like you just kind of
let
trust
him really go.
Yeah.
Give him a bunch of leash, and they've typically been flourishing in the role. So yeah, I can see how Wake Forest ends up towards the top of that last tier for me.
All right, John, we're going to go to you for the ACC hate team. Not a lot of great teams here. Are there any teams that you're lower on than consensus
for the ACC?
Yeah,
I mean Louisville, I would price more in somewhere probably the 150s to 160. Looking, I mean, they're going to be pretty big favorites in a bunch of games early. I mean, UMBC, Chattanooga.
We're fading the puck out of them early, aren't we?
Yeah, New Mexico State, Bellarmine again. So you're going to have some chances to fade them early. But other than that, there's no one who jumps out at me as being particularly overvalued. I mean, maybe Pitt a little bit as these freshman guards try and get their feet wet. But I have a hard time saying that Pitt is egregiously overvalued. I just think they could need a little time.
I think this is the toughest conference to pick a fade, right? Because they're kind of priced where they should be. So mine was NC State. NC State finished last year 52nd at KenPom. They're 61st right now. They obviously lost Jarkarl Joyner, Turk Smith. They kind of tried to replace them in the portal, but I think they replaced them, Gav, with budget versions of Jarkarl Joyner and Turk Smith with DJ Horn, Jaden Taylor. I think NC State is not a top 60 team. Gav, you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I had them as the team that I'm not really getting to mid 60s with them. So when we're referring to fade teams, we're talking about KenPom. So, fading these teams early on in the season until kind of price corrects. DJ Horn and Jaden Taylor, I know who they're not, and that's Turk Smith and Jarkarl Joyner. So, I think I'm definitely down on this team with you. MJ Rice, maybe, but we never really got to see it with him. And the depth is pretty rough. Michael O'Connell from Stanford, Ben Middlebrooks from Clemson. Don't really have the front court, depth that they did last year, especially if DJ Burns is going to hack his way through the ACC again. So, I'm down on it.
He's going to eat his way through the conference, that's for sure. Every stop. John, any last thoughts on the ACC before we move on?
No, I don't think so. And we touched on this briefly in the open, but, if it's not Duke, my whole thought process with Virginia at 6-1 is that you get a really favorable schedule. They only play UNC once. They only play Duke once. They only play Miami once. 2 of those 3 are at home. They do go to Duke. And then they get Louisville, Notre Dame, and Georgia Tech twice. So,
all right,
Bennett.
That's 6 wins right there.
Right, more likely than
At least
not.
5,
So
right? Yeah.
yeah, so like you could certainly see this team just based on schedule alone being 15-5 while still being like number 30 in KenPom.
Yeah, Gav, before we move on, I do want to touch on Virginia. Younger roster than he usually has, right? Like he usually relies on the old guys. He's got what, like McNeely, Ryan Don are probably going to start for him. Thoughts on Virginia in general? It's like a different type of roster than he usually has here.
Yeah, but you know exactly how they're going to play with the mover blocker and the pack line. You know, getting Reese Beekman back, I think keeps him in that conversation. You know, might be the best defensive guard in the conference and potential NBA guy, but definitely still needs to increase the 9.5 points a game. I think he does. He could be in for a big year.
I'm not buying it, John. The 6-1. I hate that bet. We'll start with you, John. Let's go to the Big East. Really fun conference last year. Obviously, a bunch of really fun teams. They're on TV a lot. Big East is going to be the same way this year. Some new coaches are in the fold. What's your Big East love team?
It's hard to. The couple teams at the top are obviously appropriately priced on a national level.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about Villanova. I thought 40, 50-1. That was a reasonable long shot to take national title wise. But outside of them, I think everybody else, KenPom wise, is pretty appropriately priced. St. John's has generated probably more offseason buzz than any other team for obvious reason. I think KenPom got some shit for putting them 60th. And, is it something that comes together later in the year?
I think that's right. I think 60 is probably right.
I do too. But then I say, all right, well,
but then you're fading Pitino early in the season,
Right. Exactly. So if I had to say one team right now, like as you start the season is underpriced, I think they might be a little bit underpriced. But other than that, I think everybody else is pretty much spot on. Creighton at 12 was low for me. I think they're like a borderline top 5. They're going to get some chances too early to just run some people off the floor. Florida A&M, North Dakota State, Texas Southern, Central Michigan, they're going to have a chance to win by 40 if they want to in those types of games.
Yeah, I think Creighton, early team total overs, probably a good bet. Gav, thoughts on them? St. John's, 60th at KenPom. Torvik's got them 54th. Pretty tough early schedule. I mean, I don't know. All right. Not as tough as I thought, but they do have some tests early. Thoughts on those two teams?
St. John's just got lost in a scrimmage without Dingle and Soriano, I think, so it's, oh my God, now it's alarm bells. I kind of think that, it's probably a team that takes some time to gel, honestly. So I don't know if I would look to bet them early on as much as I would look to probably bet them, maybe the second month of the year as Pitino starts to kind of figure out roles and jobs on the team and whatnot. Yeah, I think Creighton and Nova are kind of similar for me in that I would have them higher rated than 12th and 23rd respectively, but it's can you really love Creighton at 5 versus 12? I mean, there's not a whole lot of differentiation there, but I think those are kind of I'm basically where I'm at is I'll listen to any argument for a non-UConn team, the top tier in this conference to win.
We should give a Providence argument here. Providence is going to show up with the 2 best players on the floor in most games. This is the deal with Kansas State last year. Bryce Hopkins and Devin Carter in the Big East, both coming back, I think is massive. Bryce Hopkins is going to be a first-round pick. Clear wagon. Gav, you did note in our Big East show that he wore down towards the end of the season. I think if there's any mid-tier team that can touch the top, I think it's going to be Providence, man. John, I would like your thoughts on Kim English. Do you think that he can do the Big East thing? He's young, obviously. Thoughts on that, and then just thoughts on coaches in general impacting a St. John's.
I think the idea of Kim English is a lot better than the actual Kim English. People are and have been for a long time enamored with him because he's so good with the media and comes off so well, and he's polished, and he's a good presence. Seems to relate to the players.
He has a great interview.
For sure. There's a gregarious nature there that works to his benefit, but his offenses have not been particularly good. Now he goes into the elite of the elite league against some of the best coaches in the country, and I watched a lot of Mason just as an A10 fan of sorts, and it's hard to reconcile. Josh Oduro was a good player, George Mason, but like, is he a dominant five in the Big East?
Is he going to translate, you think, or no?
I think he ends up being, he's okay, but he's closer to the average tier as far as Big East fives. I mean, it's hard to you put him up against a Donovan Clingan, and you're like, man, this is really the same.
There's a lot of less than last year, but there's still a lot of good big men in this conference.
Oh no, for sure. And I just want to go back to we were talking earlier about, or a couple minutes ago. It's hard to nitpick Creighton at 12, for example. I think we should note what the gap is KenPom-wise between number 1 and number 12. So Purdue's number 1, Creighton's number 12. The difference on a neutral floor there is like 4.5 points. Yeah. So the separation at the top is so minimal between these teams. Mm-hmm. Difference between number 1 and number 20 is 6.5 points. Like we're so threatening Eagles here early in the season.
Yeah, I think Creighton's got the ceiling to be number 1. I think Creighton can win it all. Gav, any thoughts on that? And then go into your Big East hate team, I guess.
Yeah, I co-sign anything Creighton related this year. I think it looks more like your father's Creighton of the Doug McDermott with the ball just popping everywhere on the perimeter and throwing teams in ball rotations and the blender and then dumping.
Yeah, they just blow teams out early in the season? I think they could. I think we take Creighton team totals. This is a betting show, right? Like the first month, Creighton team total overs. I think they can just wagon teams early.
Yeah, especially like the mid majors where Calc is just going to have a massive advantage. Yeah. But one team, I'll go into my hate team because it kind of piggybacks that. But I'm going to say UConn. Dare I say it? I know I have the Clingan national title Wooden Award feature, but here's kind of my issue with UConn is you don't just lose the best trio potentially in the school's history in terms of 3 NBA guys, 2 guys in the first 30 picks or whatever, and just kind of reload with 1 freshman and 1 Rutgers spot up shooter transfer and Cam Spencer. I think that UConn is actually tailor-made to blow the doors off some of these bad teams early where they're not going to get pushed athletically. They're kind of less premier athletes against some of the mid-majors that aren't going to put a Cam Spencer. I don't know how Cam Spencer plays defense when, is Stephon Castle going to defend? I don't think they have much athleticism really 1 through 4. So they either play extremely cohesively or I think that they're going to just lose out to some of these more premier athletic teams that can put them in compromising positions on the defensive end. But when they're not pushed like that and they can just rain threes, Newton setting up 3 really good shooters in Caravan, Cam Spencer, and Stephon Castle, I think that they're going to be putting 100 on a couple of these shitbox teams early, but struggle during conference play.
Yeah, John, Newton surprised me how well he played in the Big East. Thoughts on UConn in general, and then your fate team here in the Big East.
I think Gavin's assessment of UConn is spot on, and Hurley the last couple of years has just blown the doors off these quad 4 type opponents.
Yeah. Just killed them.
And they open. Yeah, and this kind of plays into a larger point. I was going to try and address this in my brand new Substack that I started, but KenPom the last several years, and Matt Metcalf at Circa, one of the odds makers there, noted this too, that for some reason KenPom at the extreme high and the extreme low ends has trouble scaling blowouts. So UConn Northern Arizona opening night is projected 23. That probably should be closer to 30. Clingan or no Clingan, really. So when you see them against a sub, for some reason Northern Arizona is 213. That's way too high for them. But when you see them against a sub 300 team, give them like another 4 to 5 points just because of how Hurley treats these games. He wants to put 100 on them. Interestingly enough, and this is something that came up with FAU and all their luck in close games last year, UConn dominated the entire season, start to finish. They were 1-5 in games decided by 6 or fewer points. They do struggle, and it's been a several season-wide trend. They do struggle in really tight games. So if they're not as dominant as they were last year, they're probably going to drop a few more of these Big East games during the year.
Yeah. All right. So thoughts on coaching like St. John's. So St. John's was my fade. You said that you wanted to bet on them early. So how much do you think the coaching change matters there? And then is there anyone that you're fading in the Big East early, John?
I mean, that is easily the biggest upgrade, certainly in the conference, if not in several different conferences. Mike Anderson was and has been for a long time just like a roll the balls out type of coach.
Yeah.
And you actually now have a coach who game plans and watches film and teaches you things like how to dribble and how to pass. So that's pretty exciting.
Also has been in all these games, like has done it all.
Yeah. Other teams.
So how much do you weigh that in your betting model, right? Like, so they bring in a new coach. How does that work for you in your betting model?
There's no, I can't give you like a quantification type thing there, but I think you see less volatility. Whereas, the way Anderson played, they played this breakneck pace that some games you could see them like there were games like they play UConn and they look incredible. But then, they look like shit against DePaul, for example. I think with Pitino, you just see a lot more stability. So if there's any sort of adjustment beyond the obvious bump up in rating overall, I think you just see less variance and more consistent efforts game to game.
Yeah. Gab, any last thoughts here on the Big East? That's a huge change too. Like we've been targeting St. John's games in DFS personally. Like what's his is he going to run a slower pace? What's the deal with his style?
Yeah, there's like a couple tenets of Pitino. Like I would say the first two being protecting the rim. I think the worst block percentage that his center had in like a 10-year stretch at Louisville was like 300th best nationally in the nation. They're going to protect the rim. That's part of the reason why I didn't know if Soriano was going to be a 30-plus minute guy. He might find somebody else for that, but they're going to protect the rim and they're going to crash the offensive glass like no other. But he was a flex tempo guy a lot. I mean, I think I noted he was anywhere from inside the top 100 to 280 during his stretch at Louisville. Like, imagine that a coach kind of probably playing to a team's strengths, depending on depth, depending on ball handlers' ability to push in the open floor, so on and so forth. So probably going to be a wait and see. It definitely won't be as fast as the last 2 years when they were number one in the nation. But yeah, I still think it's not going to be some slow it down type affair, St. John's.
Yeah, John, I got 2 questions before we move on to the next conference. Thoughts on that, like their pace and what he's going to do. And then we've done the entire Big East without mentioning Marquette. I want your thoughts on Marquette coming into this year after an obviously insane year last year.
Yeah, as far as the pace, Gavin's right. He's been a very adaptable coach over the years. I think they end up kind of mid-pack, somewhere in that, anywhere from 100 to 150. So skewing slightly faster, but nothing to write home about. I mean, neither projected starting guard, assuming Jenkins and Dingle are the starters. I mean, neither of those guys are game breakers athletically. Like Dingle is like an old man style, great cutter, great mover without the ball, great shooter off the dribble. Like that doesn't strike me as we're going to run. Dennis Jenkins obviously was with him at Iona last year. Like good athlete, but not the kind of guy I'd expect to be at the head of a top 10 tempo. And then the other guards, I guess depends how much Wilcher plays. But Naheem Aline, mostly a shooter. So I just don't think it's a roster that's built to go crazy fast, but they'll be average.
Yeah, so I just pulled it up. Their tempo on KenPom 103 last year. Before we move on, John, I do need your thoughts on Marquette going in.
My only concern, I traditionally don't love these teams who just run it back, especially in the portal era, to not add somebody that's a little concerning. But Shaka seems like his staff is identifying recruiting fits pretty well. I mean, it's hard to argue with the success. So I think some of these younger guys who are going to ascend into more minutes, not starting level minutes, but like reserve type rotation minutes, they're probably a little better than I'm expecting. So I'm trying to tell myself, look, on paper, it looks like this is maybe a bit of a regression candidate, but I think they end up basically looking more or less like they looked last year. I think their range of outcomes is actually really narrow. Like they're a great floor.
I mean, this is
with
super high floor team, right? Like this team's not going to lose games that they shouldn't early, you know?
No, but you know, I guess the bigger question, big picture is the ceiling, and that's debatable. But no, I think they're incredibly high floor, and I think their game-to-game volatility is really low.
Well, if Tyler Kolek doesn't get hurt in March, we might know the answer to that question, though. With the hand injury, Gavin.
True.
All right, let's
Michigan State might not be a top 5 team either.
Yep.
Speaking of Michigan State, Gav, let's go into the Big Ten. I'll start with you. I know you haven't talked in a while. You love to talk, so let's start with you with Big Ten team that you love.
Oh man,
there's a couple here, I think.
Yeah, I like the first one that jumps out to me.
Ohio State,
Indiana.
Oh,
well, Ohio State's 35th and Indiana's 49th. Man, like I still have Indiana in the second tier teams, you know, behind the Purdue and Michigan tier, and with Illinois and Maryland. Like, Mike Woodson.
Are we still believing in Xavier Johnson to like play a full year?
Yeah, he's got to stay healthy, obviously, and you know it probably all goes to shit. Yeah, he was great, and if he comes back healthy with that, you know, front court, I mean, it might be the highest ceiling, you know, front court, not just in the conference, maybe in the nation. Like, I mean, Kalel Ware, Mbako, and Renault. That's a mean trio. Ken Woodson kind of connected all together. I think Indiana's coming to the year a little bit underrated at 49.
Yeah, John, I had two teams here for my Big Ten love. It was Ohio State and Indiana. Same reasons as Gav with Indiana. Like the front court, I think has got potential to be like best in the conference behind Purdue, just because of like the upside. And then Ohio State, just like losing the guys that they did, I think is going to help them. And I think that they're going to be more stable with Bruce Thornton running the show here. It's like Thornton, Bonner. They bring in Jameson Battle, who Gab brought up in the Big Ten show. Like, did he get bored at Minnesota? Like, every year besides last year, he was like a 38% shooter. Had a shit year last year. Like, I think Jameson Battle is a good ad for them. And then, like, you have the upside of Roddy Gale coming to his second year. Zed Key's going to be healthy. Akpara, defensive guy. My two teams are Indiana and Ohio State. What do you think about those two guys?
I'm wait and see on Indiana. I think I see the same potential that everybody else does. But, you know, Woodson's offenses have been so clunky. The defense here should be very good, but there's enough concerns about the offense that give me pause. I don't have really a strong take on Indiana at all. I'm curious just to see them the first couple games. I agree with you on Ohio State. Last year was like the season from hell, like the Murphy's Law of all Murphy's Law seasons. 2-9 in close games, 1-8 in close games in the Big Ten. Shot quality had them as number 26 in the country overall. Like they were a good team that was unbelievably snake bitten. And some of that was Holtman's late game coaching for sure. The Battle ad to me is the double-edged sword. He's a great shot maker, gives the offense some needed gravity. Horrible defender. So he's kind of going to have to go like offense defense at the end of the game with him. But I think there's some real growth coming with those freshmen to sophomore guys who got thrown into the fire early last year. So I'm with you on Ohio State. The other one who intrigues me just from a ratings perspective is Penn State at 85. Mike Rhodes has won wherever he's gone. I actually think he has a pretty good roster for what he wants to do. No team in the country is pivoting more style-wise than Penn State is. Mm-hmm. Normally, you say to yourself, well, that's fade material. We're doing the completely opposite thing of what we were doing before, but he actually has a roster that can do it. So they're going to be a tough out. Like this style.
Talk about
in
that.
Big Ten.
Talk about like his style and like what he does.
They're not the old shock of ECU teams that pressed every possession without hesitation. They do press a lot, and they're incredibly aggressive, run and jump in the half court defensively, take a lot of chances gambling. But they're also pretty good at protecting the rim just because of their athleticism. And to bring Ace Baldwin over, who knows the system backwards and forwards,
Oh no, we lose John.
Is he a Big Ten star? No.
Ace? Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a star in the Big Ten, but I think this roster is actually pretty well built, and I think they're going to catch some teams off guard just because no one in the Big Ten plays like this. It's a conservative drop coverage type league. This is the opposite of all that.
Yeah, so like Gav, we were talking about on the Big Ten show their additions. Like, I don't know why Wahab transferred here for this style of play, but Wahab, we haven't been able to kind of uncork in 4 years. But I think Zach Hicks is a good fit there. Thoughts on this Penn State team, Gav, and then any fades that you have in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I said it on our Big Ten show. Like they're going to sneak up on some teams some nights. Boy, those Purdue guards against the up the line pressure. I think Rhodes was at least 95th percentile in press frequency. So yeah, they're not pressing every play like the Shaka teams, but it's a lot.
Yeah,
and it's kind of a collection. There's so many guys that he brings in, right? So it's almost like God, just by sheer quantity, you got to find some quality. Is it Puff Johnson? Is it the other? And I can't think of the name of the other North Carolina kid, but
I mean, Hubert didn't play anyone, so like who knows, right? Like
I have no idea what those
right?
guys. So yeah, I think they're going to be sneaky on some teams in any given night, especially when you talk like some of the shorter rest games, like if they're going. Big Ten does Sunday, like Thursday, Sunday, something like that. It's going to be a tough prep for some of these teams. But now on the hate side of things, boy, there are a multitude, a bevy of options, a cornucopia, some might even say. I will go with
Wisconsin.
I said on the show your place, 3,000 minutes in Rebraca, McCaffrey, and Murray. You have Sanford, who had one of the most legendary OBPRs on Evan Mia's site. But man, that team is so devoid of any kind of interior, not only defense, but scoring. Like Rebraca did a lot cleaning up just kind of by himself so that Murray could float around the perimeter. Or Ben Crockett, the guy that they bring in, is not really like a bang down low interior player. I think Iowa takes a significant step back. I just don't know how they have, another top 5 kind of offense that they've just been replicating year over year under Fran McCaffrey.
Yeah, John, Rebraca was better than I thought he was going to be coming in. We talked about that last year. Thoughts on the guy they bring in from Valpo, Iowa? Like, I like Sanford, but man, like top 50 team. What are your thoughts on Iowa and then your conference fade here?
There's some kind of fundamental similarities between the Missouri Valley and the Big Ten, just in terms of like a lot of post-centric offenses. A lot of the tems play fairly slowly. So he's an interesting – he's like a really good –
Iowa doesn't.
No, right. That's what I was going to get to. Iowa wants to go up and down. So that's kind of weird. And then, of course, he's not like he doesn't – he lacks any of the pop of their recent big, stud forwards.
Yeah.
But no, McCaffrey, as much as he's a lunatic, he pretty much always exceeds like his public persona, what people think of him. But this roster on paper is his weakest, probably in at least 5+ years. So there's going to be nights where they're really hot, but their shooting really fell off last year. This wasn't like the flame throwing teams that we've gotten used to. Sanford, everyone expects him to make the big jump, and that's probably going to happen. But outside of him, there's no one who really scares you. But at the same time, I think they're appropriately priced overall. But they're not going anywhere big. So no, I don't have any bone to pick with their current ranking.
All right. So who I do have a bone to pick is with Wisconsin. Wisconsin, John, 20th at Ken Palm to start the season. Thoughts on them? Like they're kind of rolling it back out, bringing in AJ Storr, which is a weird fit, I think. So they end the season 61st at Ken Palm. He has him starting 20th with the same team. Probably a healthy Tyler Wall. He battled injuries last year, but can this team really make a 40 spot jump in the rankings?
So Wisconsin for me is very game by game because the way they play is conducive to playing a ton of close games. And I saved this stat. I tweeted it out a couple months ago. So last 2 seasons, they've played 68 total games. Of those 68, 42 have been decided by 6 points or fewer.
Jesus.
So the next team is Ryder, who's only 34 close games in that span.
Wow.
So when Wisconsin is catching 7-8 points on the road at Michigan State or something, like that's a good spot generally to back them. But when you have them laying 20, against Arkansas State in the opener, or 17, whatever it is, or 24 against Robert Morris on November 17th, like those are the spots where I'm like, man, as long as Wisconsin doesn't go 10 for 20 from 3, like I feel pretty good that they're just not going to have enough possessions to get there. So I tend to evaluate them. I think they're a little high overall, but I do kind of view them on a game-by-game basis.
So just to compare, John, they are right next to, in Ken Palm, USC, A&M, Villanova. I think I like all 3 of those teams over Wisconsin.
Agreed.
Gav, thoughts on Wisconsin here before we move on?
Yeah, I was like, they were 333rd in bench minutes too. So, it's not like there's a whole lot of ceiling lurking that hasn't, popped on the team yet. We definitely know it seems like pretty high floor team, minimal to no ceiling, in my opinion. But, I still think they'd make the tournament. But, 20 is probably a little bit ambitious.
I think 20 is their absolute ceiling, honestly. I think this is like a 40-ish team. All right, let's move on. Let's do the Big 12. Gav.
Before we get there, there's a fascinating game Friday night, the first Friday of the season, November 10th. They host Tennessee, and Ken Palm projects Wisconsin -1. So
let's go.
Yeah,
Tennessee's gonna murder them.
That's
all right, wait. -1.5.
Wisconsin -1.
Yeah, I can call the accountant. I'll be right back.
I
got to get a bridge loan.
Yeah, John, we're going to be on Tennessee there. Let's go to the Big 12. Gav, I'll start with you. I have one team highlighted here. I'm not sure it's going to be the same one that you have, though. You're a Big 12 guy. You played in the Big 12 for baseball. What's your lean here?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Any conference that I play in, I would have thought it'd be a shit conference, but no, it's the best conference in basketball. It's bringing in a lot of the newer teams from the American, and so it's not going to be kind of as stout night in and night out as it was. Where I think at one point last year, almost every single Big 12 game was a quad one game at one point or another. So. I think the question becomes, if you're not going Kansas, kind of which of the 3 teams in the second tier do you maybe look to in Houston, Baylor, and Texas? Like my inclination says, just bet on Kelvin Sampson instead of Rodney Terry, because I'm kind of out on Baylor. So I'll take Baylor for my hate team. I think 7th is really freaking ambitious, man, for just what they lost year over year. Like, man, Flagler was a multi-year point guard. Cryer was arguably one of the better scorers, best shooters in the conference, gone. You replace Key George with Walton, the freshman who seems a little more two-way, a little bit bigger, so maybe that helps. But you don't really bring in any other help for rim protection. This team just was mid-range jumper happy last year and didn't defend on the other end. So I don't know if Chamo Achachua just being fully healthy really fixes that. So I think Baylor is kind of more towards the kind of 20 to 25th range for me rather than top 10.
All right. I can tell John hates this pick, so I'm going to let John talk.
No, I think actually I lean towards Gavin's side on this. To lose 2 elite shot creators and shot makers in Cryer and Flagler is a big deal. And So shot quality had them. They were like one of the biggest gaps between shot selection and shot making. And my theory for a couple of years is you can get away with taking shitty shots if you have killer shot makers. And they were 271st in shot selection.
LJ Cryer, right?
Right. But they were number one in shot making. So
yeah,
is that a function of Drew just saying like, all right, we're not going to really run anything. You guys just go figure it out. Is he going to maybe run more offense this year? I don't know, maybe. But I think that's really hard to repeat when you don't have that caliber of shot maker replacing them. Like Ray J. Dennis, it was a good guard in the MAC. Is he breaking open a Big 12 game? I don't think so.
So, John, a lot of national publications have him as first team All Big 12. Thoughts on like how he's going to translate to a really, really tough conference here?
I don't agree with that at all. I mean, so he goes from what he was at Boise, he was at Toledo.
2 years. I think he's 2 years at Boise, right?
Jump. Yeah,
it's a huge jump. Like he's going to be guarded by like absolute dogs now in this conference. You know.
Wait, is he going to break down DeJuan Harris off the dribble like that? That feels like a stretch to me coming from the MAC. Yeah, coming from the MAC with like, outside of Akron and Kent State, like some of the worst defenses in the country. I have a hard time seeing that. So I think 20 to 25 is pretty fair.
All right, so we're on the same page there. John, we'll go to you first. Team that you like more than consensus in the Big 12. Big conference now with adding 4 teams here.
Yeah, so TCU was a really good shot selection team last year, in part because they were constantly at the rim. Like this team was just, and a lot of that was Mike Miles and Damian Boss. So it's my concern is that
TCU
just that Nelson can't. Again, you're elevating from a mid-tier, lower-tier conference, but I think there's an expectation that Nelson is like the guy, and I'm not sure if I'm not sure they're going to say go have 28% usage. I think it'll be a little more balanced. There'll be a lead on the offensive glass again. The shooting should be better. Could it really be worse? So I think
Emmanuel Miller is going to be an all-conference guy, John.
Yeah, he might. So if there's one team that I think is too low at 30, that's probably mine. I would go more like 17 to 20 range.
All right, Gab, I'm going to step in here because Torvik has Iowa State at 50. I think that's way too low. Iowa State defensively, obviously, top 10 last 2 seasons at least. They're going to play slow. I think Tamin Lipsey has got all conference potential here. Like if he starts to score any more than he did last year, like they lose Holmes, Kalsher, gone. Yeah, like Grill is gone. I think if Lipsey scores more, right? Like he's going to be like a 12, 5, and 5 guy and be first team. I didn't have the balls on our Big 12 show to put him first team. This is a really good conference. I think that he's going to knock on first team. He can't shoot, but there's also a lot of guys who couldn't shoot when they were 17 and then were fine the next year, right? Like he doesn't have to be 40%, John. Like if he's 33, that's fine, I think Lipsey's could be really, really good. They have a 5-star Frosh, best commit in the school history. He's probably going to play out of the gate. I don't think there's a chance Iowa State finishes at 50 at the end of the season. I think they're way better than that. Gav, what do you think?
Yeah, I think 31 on KenPom? That feels more right. You just get such a good floor with this team defensively. I think I noted on our show that they had the number 1 near proximity defensive rate on Haslam. And I think the gap from them to number 2, who I think was Sam Houston off the top of my head, was like the same gap that was from 2 to 65 or something like that. So when you just play with that kind of inherent advantage, keeping people away from the rim and forcing them to make tough shots, you're going to keep yourselves in games naturally. It'll kind of more depend on what the offense can pick up, because I think offense probably takes a small step back, just losing that kind of leadership. And, Kalsher could shoot a little bit from 3, Holmes as well. It's a lot more question marks now around the perimeter, but the freshman that's coming in, the top 15 guy, he sounds like a perfect TJ Otzelberger, high motor, rebounds and defends his position well. The team will probably go as far as the offense takes them, but it's probably, I think, right around they're at, just outside top 25 range.
His name is fucking Omaha. How did he go to Iowa State? I don't understand that. John, last thoughts here, and then who's your Big 12 fade?
Yeah, I just want to clarify with TCU. I'm certainly not. There's no one in this conference I'm like in love with as far as undervalued. I actually put TCU and Texas Tech kind of in the same bucket as like could be better than they appear to be at the start of the year. So TCU's 30th, Texas Tech's 43rd. Like if the Tech thing comes together, like that's probably a top 20, 25-ish team with McCaslin, who is, by the way, like an ATS monster over his career. Like, dude, it's just crushed the spread.
Have we checked out their early season schedule? Texas Tech.
I have not. Under Beard and Adams, they traditionally played a bunch of dog shit teams. But I think they're playing.
So
are they playing Nova?
They played Nova early.
Yeah.
On a neutral. And then Butler at Butler. I think that's a good spot, probably. Butler's going to be god-awful. They play Vandy, too, on a neutral.
Yeah, Vandy's probably overrated, so it's still pretty soft in the non-con for them.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's cool. So I kind of view those two as the same. But team, it's weird. I actually have more hates than loves in this conference. It seems, I mean, if you add a bunch of teams, your quality can drop off. Man, I hate this UCF team. Like, really hate this team.
Look at the fucking roster.
Yeah, man. It didn't dawn on me till this week. I hadn't really like dug into it, and I have a really hard time seeing how this team doesn't go. How many teams they play 20 games in this league, like, or 18? How are they not 3-15?
They're gonna win 3 games?
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, this is pretty rough. Like, it looks like Darius Johnson is gonna be the high usage guard. Like, you look at his shot quality page, it is all 10 percentile, 15 percentile. Like, he's just not built.
You posted that on Twitter. You were comparing him to who? The
Denver Jones, right?
Denver Jones.
Auburn. No. It was Auburn guy.
Yeah. So if that's really the plan here, like, they were 200. They were like 260th in points per possession in the half court. Like, everything for them is they have to generate it off of their steals, their turnovers, their havoc. And with what they lost last year, like, they weren't expecting to lose Taylor Hendricks. Like, he was supposed to be the ascendant freshman to sophomore guy. Right.
Yeah.
Instead, he's gone.
They have Omar Payne. All right, come on.
Omar Payne.
They lost the kid to Kentucky. Like, they had a bad offseason, and it's the worst possible timing going into this league.
I think that there's almost no chance that this team doesn't finish last, unless it's West Virginia, because West Virginia is going through it right now. Gav, thoughts on those two teams? We're talking about hates, you know. My two were West Virginia and Oklahoma State. Your alma mater there. Were they on your list?
Yeah, I had West Virginia there.
It's got to be, right?
It's just, it's so weird. I'll tell you what, Ken Palm has UCF at 6-12 in conference.
No shot.
If Rivers opens like a 5.5 for their conference wins, we'll be again calling the accountant. I think that's probably how we look to bet UCF, but those are only going to pop out in the next couple days. I don't know how West Virginia is going to defend anybody on the perimeter. Thank God you have Jesse Edwards to clean up a lot of garbage, and maybe he can kind of keep you in some games against these lesser teams. But 64th, and Josh Eilert's first year is quite ambitious. They're probably 40 plus spots too high.
John, is there any chance that West Virginia finishes the year 56 at Bartoro?
No.
I mean, so they're starting
some 5%.
Cook is already hurt. He got hurt yesterday. Like, he's in the hospital. Both of their transfers, it was Raycon Battle and Farrakhan, were denied. This is not a Power 5 roster, John.
No, they're in tough shit. I know they played George Mason the other night, and I didn't get to check that out, but I did read that they trailed for like a substantial portion of that game. So it's going to be a hell of a long year there.
Yeah, so my big fade, obviously, was West Virginia, seeing that they're 56 on Torvik, 64th on Ken Palm. You think there's a better chance that they finish 200th or 60th, John?
To finishing 200th is really hard in a
the Big 12.
Like, I don't even know. I don't think the algorithm can even like conceive of that. So
All right,
I will say 60.
All right, so let's look at West Virginia's early season schedule because we're definitely going to bet against them. So they play.
They're going to be favored a lot.
I don't know these teams: Missouri State, Monmouth, Jacksonville State, neutral SMU. I think SMU there.
Oh, I know what game John's going to bet against them. At home, laying 15 against Bellarmine, John.
Bellarmine, yeah. At home, laying 15 against Bellarmine.
That's typically like such a great home court too. Like they get every call, and it just feels like teams. Even it's not even the pressure. And by the way, they're not going to be able to do. They can't do any of the pressure stuff this year. They have no depth. You're going to press with Kirk Risa. Like none of that shit's happening.
They have what 7 or 8 scholarship players.
Yeah, no,
So
they're somehow. They're going to
for us. It's going to be gold because these guys like. Quinn Slazitsky is going to play 35 minutes a game and it's going to be cheap. So we're going to be playing these assholes in DFS and just tilting our nuts off when they score 45 points. All right, let's move on. Let's go to the Pac-12. Gavin, your neck of the woods here. I have a bunch of love teams here. I am higher on the Pac-12 than I think most. I think there's a couple really good teams here. What do you got here, Gav?
Yeah, it's kind of the question of if not Arizona, who are you going to bet?
A bunch of teams.
Yeah, and I took shots. I don't know if it's Homer or not. I think I bet SC at 5-1 and Colorado at 7-1. Like
Colorado's going to be good.
What was the stat I had on Tad Boyle teams? Like Colorado has finished top 50 at Ken Palm adjusted defensive efficiency each of the last 5 years, 6 of the last 8, and 9 of the last 12. Like, if they can maintain even a modicum of that type of defensive standard, I think they really have offense to potentially do this. But I think if I'm going to look at one team, God, I could have sworn that Cal came in way higher on Torvik than they did at 146. Like, I guess I'll go out on a limb. I thought that, the Torvik was like way too high, but I feel like this is still pretty low. I think they finished probably right around, 100th area. There's still some not so great teams in this conference that they're going to have plenty of shots against night in and night out. I'd probably put Cal. 146 seems – when you're only 30 spots above Oregon State, that seems low for me.
So they did just lose Jalen Tyson, though.
Yeah.
The waiver was declined. That's a big loss there, John. But yeah, I mean, they brought in a ton. My guy, Jalen Cone from VT, he's like 5'0", but clearly proved himself at NAU. Thoughts on the Pac-12 here, teams that you're higher on? I have a couple, so I'm interested to see what you say.
So I'm not. I think Colorado is actually very appropriately priced, but I did note this was one of the biggest things that jumped out at me in Ken Palm is he's projecting the offense to be slightly better than the defense, and I have a hard time seeing how that possibly comes to fruition. He's projecting 24th in offense and 31st in defense. Since 2011, Tad has, I believe, one top 40 offense, and that was the McKinley Wright senior year offense. So, I guess a lot of it
McKinley White is like wagon year.
Yeah. So a lot of it hinges on Lampkin and how much he plays because, Evan Batty, who couldn't jump over a piece of paper, was a really productive player in this offense. And Lampkin is like bigger, more skilled, like better. He's a better version of Batty. So I wonder what his usage looks like. And if they're trying to play through him, that could actually really work because I hate the idea of them trying to play through these guards who just are kind of underwhelming. And then the star freshman.
I kind of like KJ Simpson. Why is he
like
underwhelming?
him as a ball mover and a facilitator. I just don't see him as like a 1A type of option.
Okay.
But, Cody Williams, everything I've read about him is that he's like a great connector piece. Like he's unlike a lot of like the lottery type freshmen, he's not looking to put up 15 shots a game. So that's great, for your actual like movement and all that. But he's not the day one alpha. He's not going to look like the USC, blanking the name of the USC point guard, Collier. who's like, you
Yeah.
see him, you're like, holy shit, this dude's like a game changer. So I think Colorado's just super high floor. I don't see that great ceiling, but I think 25 is totally on point.
So Colorado early has got a really easy schedule. I think their toughest non-con is Colorado State on the road. John, do we like that? I don't know much about Colorado State
Miami and
this year. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I really like Colorado. I'm a DFS guy, so like KJ Simpson is going to have a huge year, I think, stats-wise. TDS comes back, Gavin. They bring in Lampkin. Julian Hammond was good. I thought Luke O'Brien was good. I think that Colorado's got the ceiling to kind of feels weird to win this conference with like UCLA being down. And also, I'm not sure if they're going to be down just because. So they're also one of my buys just because like the unknowns with this team, John, like they've got so many foreign dudes who have played overseas who are going to step in. And I just trust the coach. I don't know, Gav. I just gave you a bunch of shit. Just talk about the conference.
Yeah, I think UCLA might be one of the largest or widest range of outcome teams, like not just in the conference, but like in the country.
For sure.
Are we even fully confirmed that all those guys are good to go? I thought I heard there was issues, whether it was visa related or something, but yeah, you just have no idea. Supposedly there's a couple guys that are, potential first rounds, but man, I got no idea on them. So they're just complete wait and see for me.
Yeah.
I'll go into kind of my hate team. I think there's kind of one pretty clear spot here, and that's Washington State for me. I think this team is going to be horrendous this year. Like, just with the amount that they lost last year, TJ Bamba, the do-it-all guard for them, like Mogi, Powell from the perimeter, DJ Rodman's like a very serviceable 3-and-D guy that's now at SC. And you bring in Yusufu, like, okay, to pair with Jay Mullins and Jakumovsky. Like, this team finished fifth or the tied for fifth in the Pac-12. I'd be surprised if they were anything better than last or second to last in this division. So I think they're probably 30 to 40 spots, I think, too high. I think they're probably end this year closer to 150 than they do to 85.
Yeah, John, thoughts on that? And then, so my fade team is going to be Stanford. So Stanford, end of the year, 85th or so at KenPom? They start the year 42nd, 32nd on Torvik. I don't know. I just don't see that type of ceiling with this roster, John. Like, they bring in Jared Bynum, who's, an old ass guard who probably brings them up a bit, but like they lose Harrison Ingram, who kind of did everything for them. O'Connell, who we don't like, but like I just don't see a top 35-ish ceiling from Stanford. Thoughts on Stanford and Washington State here?
I agree on both fronts. My recollection is that Stanford every year is priced too high to start the season in KenPom. I'm going back and looking right now. Last three seasons. Yeah, they started 3 years ago, started 35th, finished 57th. 2 years ago, started 70th, finished 106. Last year, started 58, finished 84. So 3 years in a row, they've like substantially underachieved the preseason ranking. So that's a good barometer. It's not foolproof, but a pretty good barometer that, again, this, like, for whatever reason, the minutia of the KenPom algorithm is just overpricing them for whatever reason. Bynum is a great floor guy. Like, he stabilizes everything. He'll get the ball where it needs to go. Having two elite high-volume wing shooters in the Joneses is great. I think there's going to be some nights with this offense, like last year when they ran Zona off the floor, where this offense just pops. But still defensively, I don't really see it. Unless Maxime Reynaud takes some massive leap as a rim protector, like he's okay. But
John, how about this? We have a neutral late November that Torvik. So they're playing Arkansas, and he projects it 74-73 Arkansas. I think I would bet the house on Arkansas there against Stanford.
I think that's the Bahamas tournament. Bad news is KenPom projects at 5, so I think we're looking at more like 6-7 there. Yeah.
All right. Well,
But
never mind that.
But the athleticism disparity in that game is mind blowing, and I think Stanford is really getting hurt too by the portal and NIL in general. Like their heads at that school are so far up their asses that they just aren't going to make the commitment athletically. It's going to be a problem in football too.
Yeah,
it is already. In
all right. Any fades besides the teams that we talked about in this conference here for you, John?
I wish Arizona State didn't open 81st because I really despise this roster. But like, can they go that much lower than 81st? Maybe. But Frankie Collins, I think for you guys in DFS probably is like a high ceiling guy. Like he can have some nights when he really pops off. Yeah. But as an actual basketball player, like making winning plays and not doing dumb shit, he's as volatile as it gets. I just don't see much behind them. Like they lost a good amount of solid players, and you just don't trust Hurley, who's like 300th and like a bunch of the shot quality metrics. Could he replace the shot making from Cambridge and Horn and Warren Washington, who's a really good two-way player? And I just hate the transfers they brought in. So yeah, I probably think they're probably a little below 100. But it's not anything I'm like jumping up and down to auto fade.
Yeah. My fades were Stanford and Utah. Do you have anything else here on the Pac-12, Gav?
Not really. God, I mean, talk about their heads so far up their ass, John. They couldn't even hire Mark Madsen, a graduate, and watch him had to go across the bay. Like, I mean, it's just mind blowing stuff over there. I don't have a whole lot more to add. I think Washington could overcome the incompetence of Mike Hopkins to potentially be interesting in this league. I think they'll definitely finish better than the 8th place that they did last year. Bring in Severe Wheeler, bring in Paul Mulcahy, bring in Moses Wood to pair with Brooks and Mia. Kepnang comes back healthy too. I think they kind of have a chance to potentially be like a second tier team in this conference.
Yeah, so my fades were Stanford and Utah. My buys were Colorado, USC, and UCLA. Mainly just because of like the upside, right? Like USC, I think early that first game, Gav, I think that line is just wrong. Honestly, I think that they're going to beat Kansas State pretty handily in that game, which you love to hear as a USC guy. I think the backcourt is going to be really, really good for USC, and that's going to carry them, especially early in the season. All right, let's move on to the SEC.
I do have
John.
I want to throw something out there. What if, just as far as Pac-12, futures, what if the Oregon freshman class really pops at 10-1? There's some pretty highly rated dudes in there. Obviously, it's been rough for Altman the last couple of years. I think we're all kind of sick of him. But what if this is like the last hurrah, and this all like Jackson Shellstad and Mookie Ware, or Mookie, whatever his name is. What if these guys?
What I will say is I think it's the easiest conference to have a long shot win, right? Like I think Duke's going to smoke the ACC, right? The Big Ten, you have the top 2 to 3 that are probably going to win. Gav, we took as our long shot Colorado. What was that, 6-1 or so?
7,
yeah. So that's what we like best. But like, I definitely would not be surprised if a long shot wins this conference. What do you think?
Yeah, I could see it. Altman hasn't been known as the longest leash coach with freshmen, so it would certainly be a different looking wrinkle. But man, yeah, the type of lineups that they can run out with Biddle and Dante, God, you can give teams real problems. You probably have to go back, more to the Altman traditional zone defense to really make it work. But yeah, I've heard good things about the point guard, I think Shellstad. So yeah, I don't mind it. 10-1 versus a 7-1 on Colorado. I can see it. Part of that is also because I just don't know if I'm buying Arizona to be sitting at the odds that they are to win this, like inside of $2. I just think that there's a little more.
I think someone
more
else
question marks for them.
Arizona wins this conference, honestly, John. All right, let's go to the SEC. Really good conference last year, obviously. A bunch of turnover. Bama probably with the most, really good team last year. They were 31-6. We all loved betting on Bama last year, John. Thoughts on the SEC in general and like who you like in this conference?
I think we alluded to it earlier, but like as much as I've hated Bruce Pearl the last couple of years, I'm just back in, and you could almost see in that Houston game last year.
This is the team.
It's there. It's there. They could be a really good team, but they had just a bonehead decision maker with Wendell Green and his running mate, who's still there, but fortunately he's only going to be the 6th or 7th man in KD Johnson. But I mentioned Denver Jones earlier, like a total efficiency monster. And then the freshman guard he's playing next to, and the top 5, like in terms of like a two-way big man, is Jani Broome like a top 3 guy as a 5? Probably is, right? Nationally, like playing both ends. He's like every bit as impactful as Kalkbrenner. So with more athleticism. So I'm really back in on Auburn having a much better, more cohesive roster this year.
Gab, I tried to talk you into Auburn on our show. Are you more into Auburn now than you were a week ago?
Yeah, I've kind of come around. Like, what if Jani Broome starts drilling and 3-pointers, man?
Well, so he has to play more than 25 minutes a game. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I don't know if, like, in higher leverage games, play him, short of fouls. But it's like early in the year with how Cardwell, I would say, is a very above average backup rim protector when you look at the landscape of backup rim protectors in the country. So they don't really need to push him early. That's part of the reason why I don't know if he's – because I was going to ask you, Jani Broome at 125-1 player of the year, but I don't even know if he's going to really get the minutes, kind of what we were talking about with Klingon. So
Gab, I have to pause you for a sec. Is the Broome-Jalen Williams combo the best front court in the conference?
Are you going to count? Are you going to count like? Probably.
Jalen Williams is fucking good last year, man.
He's going to be an NBA guy.
Yeah,
I'll give you that. Best front court.
Yeah. Go on. Sorry.
No, I was just saying how I've come around a little bit on the Auburn, but the Jani Broome, shooting 3-pointers. I think he shot like just under 30% last year, and they've said it's been a big focus for the offseason. Like, oh my God, what a friggin' terror that would be on a night in and night out basis.
Have you sitting threes? Oh shit.
Yeah. That being said, I think where I'm going to go with favorite team, Florida. Maybe it's just us analytic geeks and loving Todd Golden. Maybe it has to do with the impact transfers, bringing in a true point guard, having an NBA wing and Riley Kugel. I think this is much more like a Todd Golden looking team than kind of what he walked into last year. Ken Palm has him at 39th right now. I think they definitely have top 25 upside, if not more. I don't know if they have a real ceiling to win the conference. God, that's like, I'm thinking more like the 5 to 10% outcome type. Part of it that's because I love SC, but I think they have a really good chance to be kind of in the top 3 to 4, or be that team that makes it into the top 3 or 4 that people aren't really discussing.
Yeah, John, this seems like a conference where we got 2 really, really good teams, and then teams that are very talented that could enter that fray. Do you have any hot takes on the SEC?
I mean, I think it's going to be like, most years prior to what Bama did last year, where like a lot of these teams just kind of cannibalize each other. It's such a grind. Like everyone, for the most part, plays a fairly homogenous style. Like it's a excessively foul-prone league. Very little 3-point shooting, but like incredible athleticism up and down. So I think I think it's a good league this year to take a long shot. Like I played Bama at 15-1. I played Auburn at 12-1. Like I kind of just want to get variance with this league. And like Gavin said, he came around on Auburn more recently. I've come around on Florida early in the offseason. I was like, man, it's just a lot of guys, but not the guy. And you wonder, like, is there enough athleticism to hang in the SEC? And I think there's now enough pieces where Golden can form this into something. I don't know when that'll be, but when you look at the roster, there's certainly enough there that it should be able to come together at some point.
Yeah, Gav, I'm high on both Auburn and Arkansas. The Auburn roster, I just think is really good, right? Like what they've missed the last few years is a point guard to kind of pull it all together. They've had the other pieces. Everything I've read about Aiden Holloway is that he's going to be that guy, right? Like he's a top 15 dude. The rest of the roster is fucking rock solid. We know the coach is good. Yeah, thoughts on Auburn, and then Arkansas brings in a bunch of transfers. We trust the coach, but how long is it going to take for like all these guys to mesh? Maybe.
Yeah, usually a team that loses 3 top 40 picks or whatever takes a step back. But man, you refill the coffers, and it's almost like getting Brazil in the portal again. Just with how well he played last year. I mean, he's a future NBA guy himself. Like,
yeah,
that's the question. Their question is who's going to play point guard on this team. Like they have a lot of kind of what I would more consider off ball guys. Battle can go get his shot, but it's not always going to be the most efficient stuff. L. Ellis with training wheels kind of put back on and not just given the keys to the kingdom like he had at Louisville. We'll see what that looks like. But, it was something seeing him hit outside shots, with some of the consistency that they did in the scrimmage against Purdue yesterday. But, yeah, I think this team is good. You just trust in Muss, like, back-to-back second weekends, or I think 3 in a row, actually. So,
yeah.
They got the guys to do it. Team's gonna play well on both ends. When like Tremont Mark, I said has the Jalen Tate vibes. The super defensive wing that is gonna hit you some shots. I think they got a really high ceiling. I don't know where I'm not as high as them on you, or I'm not as high on them as you, but I think 14th, 15th is kind of right around where they should be.
Yeah, I think their ceiling is like higher than that, like 4 to 8 with this roster. John, what do you think about Arkansas? I hope that you were on them with us against Kansas in that Sunday matchup. I'm sure you were. Thoughts here on Arkansas? It's a different roster, but I think a really good roster.
My concern is similar to last year. So they were like the anti-Baylor. They were 18th in shot selection because they were constantly just at the rim. Like the ultimate downhill team, tons of offensive rebounds, tons of like points off steals. So like they're constantly shooting at the rim. But then, of course, they couldn't shoot. They were 319th in shot making. And you still on this roster don't see like, other than Trevon Brazile, who is, what is he going to look like post ACL? I don't know. Like it's such a crapshoot with these ACL guys coming back in 9-10 months. But you don't have outside of him anyone who gives you
he's going to be an all-conference player.
He very well could be, and it's I'm not sure. You wonder about the health.
Yeah.
So does this devolve into my turn, your turn, where every one of these 10 off-ball guards on the floor need to get theirs? I again, but like Gavin said, there's so much institutional faith in Musselman to figure it out. But for me, they're like Syracuse, or not Syracuse. Wisconsin, where like there's you can look at every game and say, is this a good matchup? Is this a bad matchup? Like any team that plays a condensed defensive structure, like last year, they had a hell of a lot of trouble with Troy, UNC Greensboro. These teams who can kind of protect the rim. It's tough for Arkansas to win when they're laying 16, 17 points. Those are the games you want to fade them.
All right. We can't stop an SEC preview without talking about Kentucky, John. I'm going to go to you first. Cal seems like he's on the hottest seat maybe he's ever been on. He's bringing a lot of young guys into a league that is old as fuck. Like there's a lot of old dudes in this league. He's going to start at least 3 freshmen. What do you think Kentucky's prognosis is here?
I admittedly have just not dug into them that much. And I feel like that's typical with me with Kentucky. I just like don't do a lot of research on their freshmen, and I don't bet a lot of Kentucky games early in the year. But it feels very counterintuitive to say that this team going to be really good in the oldest college basketball environment in any of our lifetimes. I mean, that seems very unlikely. that a bunch of 18-year-olds are going to compete. Like, how many of these rosters do we look at? And we're like, there's 3 24-year-olds. Everybody's so old. I just have a hard time seeing it. And even if the rumors are true that Cal is evolving and he's learning modern offense, it's hard to envision. No.
So they ended last season at 27th, John. They're starting the season 16th at Torvik, 18th at Ken Palm. Gavin, I think that's kind of this team's ceiling. I'm going to be fading this team early in the betting market. What do you think about Kentucky, Gav?
Yeah, well, their best offense last year was throwing it off the backboard and letting Oscar Tshiebwe rebound it for 2 years and put it back in. So they're going to have to be much more efficient as an offense because, with their big man issues, Ivasic, it sounds like he's not even cleared to play yet. Like, I don't know if it's the NCAA clearinghouse or what, but you also got Bradshaw's hurt and Onyeso is coming into the year hurt too. So that's going to be a major question. I watched a little bit of the blue and white scrimmage to try and get a feel for these guys. Like Dillingham was all over the place. He's kind of a slasher, smaller body, but Edwards is more the pro prospect, the kind of long, rangy wing. So, yeah, it's just going to be kind of wait and see. I don't know how much.
Gav, we see this team in 2 weeks. They're going to play Kansas on a neutral here in Chicago.
Under.
Torvik's got it. Torvik's got it Kansas by 4. If that's the actual line, we're going to be betting Kansas minus 4. John, thoughts there?
I'm looking to see what Ken Palm has at 5. Yeah, so obviously we all know that they're copying a lot of Ken Palm, but that's one that's so high profile that you might see some like manual adjustment by the odds makers to make that like 6 or 7. I can't see that opening 4 or 5.
If it opens 4 or 5, what's Gavin's line? Bridge loan?
I would throw it against right now.
We're going to call the account and get the bridge loan out, If that's anything under 6, we're just going to hammer it, right?
I think that closes like 7.5. That's my best guess. But opening night, this one is really interesting. And I haven't figured out what I want to do with it yet, but they open with New Mexico State with Jason Hooten in his first game. Legitimately brand new roster, not a single dude coming back from last year. I wonder with New Mexico State if they're like one of like the Texas State or Colorado from football, where the algorithms just don't know how to handle it. You have a really good coach, a decent roster. That's projected Kentucky minus 18. That's a lot.
I see 19 on Torvik right now.
Yeah.
That's a good segue into what we're going to close with here. I know that you two sickos like to bet other conferences, small schools, all that, I'll give Gavin the floor first because he pushed me for this segment. So go ahead, Gav.
Well, yeah, you're the power conference princess. Some of us like to dig into the mid majors. Kind of like John has a bunch of conferences out there in the Northeast that he can follow. I only have a couple out here, like Big West, Mountain West, stuff like that. But
yeah, hit us.
I took a shot with New Mexico 6-1.
Love that.
It moved from 8 to 6, kind of as I was doing a write up for it. I should have just bet it, not been an idiot. But you returned 2 guards who are all Mountain West Conference guys last year. Probably are likely both to hit the first team. They should have gone 2-0 against San Diego State last year. And I think San Diego State takes a step back this year. You lose Mensah, you lose Kashad Johnson, some of the physicality up front for sure, but should have gone 2-0 against San Diego State last year. I think having guys like Jalen House and Jamal Mashburn against switch really helps them, because you're probably not winning the conference without beating San Diego State. So I took them, bringing in Nelly Jr. Joseph. I think he's probably a better rim protector than Udezi. We'll see if he rebounds, at the same level where Udezi was threatening double-doubles a lot of times. But I think that's 3 really good pieces in a conference that is a little bit more susceptible with me being down on San Diego State a little bit.
Yeah, John, thoughts on New Mexico there? We did like them last year. I thought that they could have popped last year, honestly. But they bring back almost everyone except Udezi, and then the floor is yours. Like any non-Power 6 team that you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'll address the Mountain West thing first. I was also looking for. I've been like the biggest San Diego State fan, like program institution wise, for the last decade. But the losses this year are substantial, and they're going to play very differently. They're going to play a lot faster. They're looking to play like 4 out, even 5 out with Ladie sometimes. So I was looking to see, is there any way to fade them as a pretty prohibitive favorite? And New Mexico was one, Boise was the other, but like the Boise numbers were really sharp. I think Caesars was like plus 425 or something. And with the Mountain West being the grind that it is, I just couldn't get there on that number, but I would not fight anybody on New Mexico. My only concern with them is that they just shoot so few threes that sometimes they were at a disadvantage just from a math perspective, but they have just a couple killer shot makers. I assume with Nelly Jr. Joseph now being cleared, his visa issues are resolved. The defense at the 5 will take a huge leap. Like I'm in on them too. 6-1 would probably be my cutoff, but I certainly have no issue with it. But yeah, I guess I'll do one as well. Tulsa at 272. I mean, I think Tulsa pound for pound is the most improved team in the country. I mean, by miles. Eric Conkle. Well, Eric Conkle was a very good coach at La Tech, and he kind of has like a boomerang situation with 2 of his guys coming back, Kobe Williams and Keston Willis. And then they brought in a really productive JUCO 4. They brought in Keita from St. John's, who didn't play a lot, but looks like he could be a dominant rim protecting 5. Very raw still. But this team, the worst ATS team in the country last year, for whatever reason, the models are just not projecting much of a leap at all. They closed season 316. KenPom has them 272. That's like the difference on a neutral floor between those numbers is like 4 points. They're way better than 4 points this year. They're like 10, 11 points better, I think.
Do we have any early spots where we can target them?
I mean, opening night against Central Arkansas at home, Ken's only projecting 6.
Yeah, love that.
I mean, that's a Central Arkansas team that every year is one of the worst 10 or 15 defenses in the country.
Yeah, I mean, they've got what looks like a pretty soft non-con, even like the neutral against Oklahoma State, who I'm down on, plus 12 or so,
That's also a local game.
In-state, down the highway, little brother.
Yep.
Yeah. Thoughts there, Gav? And then do you have anything else for the
that's part of the reason why I like talking to John about this is we go about things, I think, pretty differently. This is like right out of his handbook, right? You find a team that was just diabolically Murphy's Law type year last year, kind of similar to what we were talking about with Ohio State, and they take a clear step forward, especially like in the rim protection, second to worst 2-point defense in the country last year. It was bad last year for Tulsa. So I could easily see them taking more than the step that they're talking about, which is 30 or so, 40 spots or so. Yeah, they're probably taking a bigger jump than that.
Yeah, Gav, do you have any other non-Power 6 teams that we should be looking at early?
Yeah, man. I took a bad number on Duquesne. I almost thought that I missed a huge movement when they dealt the lines. It ended up probably just being a pretty sharp line where they opened it, but it's basically a whole imported front court. And it's not going to be the tallest team in the conference, but you bring in both the Drain brothers from that St. Peter's run via LaSalle. Yeah. You bring in Sarasov, kind of a stretch big from Georgia Southern, and then old Dusan Mahorcic. The A-10 still could be Dayton's conference to lose, especially if Malachi Smith is going to be healthy, if Deron Holmes is going to show the stretch 3-point ability that he showed in the scrimmage, and if Kobe Elvis is going to take the step forward, it could be theirs to lose. But I think Duquesne has the kind of front court versatility, at least to challenge a Deron Holmes. Down low, it's not going to be the best size for size battle, but it's a lot of kind of scrappy, physical, down low, bang body bigs, and bring back all conference guy and Day Grant, to be the lead guard and scorer. I think they got some potential here to win the A-10. I think they're like 7-1 now.
John, thoughts on that? And then any last thoughts from teams around the country that we didn't cover?
I also wanted to fade Dayton. I just don't think, following the A10 for a long time, first of all, the A10 preseason favorite rarely wins. It's a league that just eats its own. That's among the many reasons why they're just not getting at-large teams in the dance lately. I mean, last year, just the automatic bid. Last couple of years have really been a down league, but you have so many like trappy road games that teams lose. So Dayton, Dayton is going to drop some like inconceivable game at UMass with like 150 people in the stands. Like that's going to happen. So I also wanted to fade them. Same idea. I played St. Bonaventure at 10-1, but I also like Duquesne. It's either way. I mean, just pick one of those teams, and you kind of get yourself like a Dayton built-in fade. Two other conferences I played, one other conference, Western Kentucky 9-1 in CUSA. Steve Lutz was maybe the best 2 or 3 hires of any team in the offseason. 39-23 ATS last 2 years at Corpus Christi, a school with like zero money, horrible rosters, and he crushed it. So now he actually inherits like a legit roster, WKU, with talent and recruiting pedigree and all that. I think he's going to smash all year. And if everybody's healthy, that's easily a top 100 team. Just as good as Liberty, to be honest, if they get to their ceiling.
Hell yeah, let's go. Do we have anything early with them? Like, are they in any tournaments or anything like that?
I have not looked at their early season schedule, but
they
opened with 2 pretty interesting true road games as dogs.
Yeah, love that. Gav, last thoughts here. Last thoughts on non-Power 6 teams, and then why don't you recap the bets that we have going into the season?
If you can find Hawaii in the 7 to 8 range. I know they've moved down in some spots to kind of the 6-ish mark, but I think there's still some 7s and 8s out there for the Big West. I don't mind that when you return the kind of the caliber of guards that they are in a conference that, like, UCSB is good. AJ Mitchell is a stud. I don't really believe in kind of the UCI numbers that have been popping up. But you get Joe McClanahan and Noel Coleman, like probably best 1-2 punch guard wise in the conference. I think Hawaii's kind of sneaky in that conference in the Big West.
Yeah, John, before I end up, just your overall thoughts, and then do you have any season-long bets that we want to record here on the show?
Did we do like a mid-major or low-major team you hate? Did we do any of that?
No, but you can go ahead. Go for it.
Yeah, there was one that really jumped out at me, kind of like a Western Kentucky level discrepancy, but in the other direction. I'm not really understanding the Drexel jump. Drexel finished last year 199, and Ken opened them 108. So you have a 91 spot leap with what is basically the same roster. The only transfer they brought in was Lucas Monroe, who was like Penn's 5th highest usage guy, maybe, but like a connector, glue guy, low usage, all that. It's, there's going to be a leap with Justin Moore, the other Justin Moore, going into his sophomore year. But like, this is a team that plays really slow. They're going to play deep drop coverage. Like, they're not going to force turnovers. It's very hard to see how that roster makes like an 8 to 9 point or 7 to 8 point type leap.
Yeah, it's huge. What, 190 to 102? That's wild.
199 to 108. Yeah.
That's what I was doing over here. I just said Drexel fade early. Gav, do you want to give out just a recap of what we've bet already? People can either find them. I'm not sure if they're going to all be available, but we do want to give out everything that we've bet already.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the stuff that we haven't, because some of these things, like when we bet Nova 6-1 for Atlantis and they're 375. Some of these you can't bet.
Yeah.
Texas Tech at 11-1 for Atlantis isn't a bad price. Carolina, Arkansas, Nova. But we still don't. I don't even know if we know about DeAndre Williams and his eligibility for Memphis. He's going to be 20.
He's fucking 29 years
old. 27, brother. Like, come on now. The Marquette for Maui, it's 5-1. I don't really buy the Gonzaga and UCLA, so it's basically kind of comes down to are you going outside the Kansas, Purdue, and then picking Tennessee or Marquette? I went Marquette, 5-1 in that spot. I just think kind of the early season cohesion, continuity helps them. Maybe that's just playing on narrative, but also a team that I really like going into the year.
I have them all here if you want me to just list them real quick.
We don't need to rehash. We already can't afford John's billable for this show, so we don't need to just keep people on for any longer than we've already done it to.
All right, well, let's wrap up then. John, thanks for hanging out. We were almost 2 hours here. I told you an hour and a half. I lied to you again. We had a blast. I mean, we're a week out. This is gonna be great. I'm kind of sick of losing money on college football, so this is gonna be great. We're 8 days out. Gavin's gonna be in Chicago in 20 days, Gav, something like that.
Champs Classic, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna be at the Champions Classic. It's gonna be an awesome night on the 14th. John, thanks so much for joining us, man. We will talk soon. I don't know how to do the outro here, so we're just gonna end the recording.